Welcome to the Erica and McAfee podcast, a faith-based podcast for Black women and women of color to share stories of grief and loss due to miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, with journeys of trying to conceive and infertility. Welcome to episode 31 of the Erica and McAfee podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by my friends at Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Erica. Happy Black History Month. After a quick Amazon search, I realized there aren't many Black authors of books in this grief and pregnancy loss community. So for the month of February, or the next 5 weeks, on the podcast, we are featuring 5 books from 5 Black authors around faith, miscarriage, stillbirth, infant and pregnancy loss, and hope to continue on this grief journey. In today's episode, we have Keanna Barnes, who shares her miscarriage story and fibroid journey. She is the author of Journey to Peace, a 31-day devotional through the grief of miscarriage, stillbirth, or other pregnancy loss. In this episode, Keanna shares her journey to getting pregnant with fibroids, how her miscarriage broke her heart into a million pieces, and her courage to try again and get pregnant with her current baby due in March 2018. Here is Keanna Barnes. Thank you, Keanna, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, tell the listeners a little about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am Keanna, and I currently work as an associate fashion designer out here in LA, Los Angeles, California. But I'm from the South. I'm from Atlanta. And basically, I've been out here. I've worked in costume design for different movies, and now I'm just working as a fashion designer. So I'm enjoying this LA life and LA sun.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your lost story.
Okay. So my lost story is around 2016. I've been married less than a year. We've been married less than a year, and we found out we were pregnant, both with our first child together and individually. So it was very exciting. And, we're not spring chickens. I'm 30. At the time I was pregnant, I was 34. So, we were very excited. Our family was very excited because they were, wanting a new baby in the family. And everything was going pretty good. We discovered soon after I got pregnant that I, like a lot of Black females, had fibroid. Mm-hmm. I had one fibroid, and I didn't know I had it before, but once I got pregnant, the hormones, I guess, and everything that was feeding the pregnancy grew the fibroid so that it was the size of probably like a grapefruit. So pretty large fibroid. And it was, I looked like I was 3 months when I was just, a few weeks pregnant. And so even when I went for my first ultrasound, they couldn't even see the baby because the fibroid was blocking my baby at like 8 weeks. So that was one hump that I was trying to get over, being pregnant with a huge fibroid. But outside of that, I had a pretty smooth pregnancy. And everything kind of came to a head at my 27-week prenatal checkup. When we went in, just a regular prenatal checkup, and the nurse who was checking us in saw that my blood pressure was sky high. I think it was, at that time, it was over 200, over, like 100 something. It was, very high. Mm-hmm. So she had me lay down and wait for the doctor, and, she was waiting on the doctor to come in. And, at this point, when they're telling you to lay down and give you something out of the ordinary after you've been going for months, you're instantly like alarms are like going off. So we're waiting for the doctor. The doctor comes in and she's like, she sees the readings, and she's like, no, you have to go immediately to the hospital, which was next door. And she said, wait, before you go, let's look for, let's check the baby's heartbeat. So, we're sitting there, and we are searching with the there's a Doppler. Mm-hmm. So she's searching with the Doppler, and, she's scanning, and my husband is like, oh, I was pregnant with a boy, and he's like, oh, he's just hiding, because I had the fibroid. He's hiding behind the fibroid. And I'm in my heart of hearts, I knew that wasn't true, but I'm still trying to be, optimistic, like he was, or like he is, rather. So, she's searching and searching. She calls in another doctor. The other doctor comes in, and they're searching and searching, and she just finally just says, there's no heartbeat. And at that moment, that's when my whole life, it just changed completely. That's when they usher you out to the back so that I guess you don't alarm all the other mothers who are waiting. And I had to go immediately to the hospital so that I can be induced for now labor and delivery. And what happened was I developed preeclampsia, mm-hmm. which is very common in Black women mm-hmm. that I've come to find out.
Yes, I had preeclampsia as well. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh,
mm-hmm.
yes. It's something that, wasn't really talked about afterwards. And after I had it, I'm now finding out that, we have a higher rate of preeclampsia and, just all these things that you never know. It's never discussed or talked about. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even, in my being naive, I didn't even realize how often stillbirths still happen, in 2016, 2017, like, I thought this was just a thing of before doctors and hospitals,
Right.
But, so I went in and it was just a blur from that point. I'm just like numb. I'm just still like in disbelief. It was kind of like an out-of-body experience. My mom flew in from Atlanta, and, it was just, the entire experience was a blur, and it was completely heartbreaking. You wait and you hear the stories about moms who come home, who go through the whole pregnancy, and they're like all the swelling and the doctor's visits and the nausea, and it's all worth it when you hear the baby cries, once you're in the delivery room. But when you have to deliver, and that once you deliver, it will be the most definitely silent ever. It does something to you, and it's just a really, tragic experience to go through, I think, personally.
Right.
And I don't think it's talked about enough, and that's why I appreciate you and your platform, for talking about it.
I agree. So take us back to, actually going through delivery, actually labor and delivery, and then what happened after you delivered him.
Right. Yes. So I like I said, they immediately took us to the hospital, and so we were my mom got on the first flight out. I didn't want to have to go through this without her. So we were there, and they were giving me all of the magnesium, I believe it was, to keep my blood pressure down. Mm-hmm. Because at one point it was like 300 over something crazy.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So they were kind of looking at me like they didn't understand how I was even still standing, because that was like stroke mode, Mm-hmm. And they kept, so they were trying to bring my blood pressure down. I was vomiting from all these medicinal concoctions that they were coming up with. Mm-hmm. My mom, she came in, my in-laws, they were here in the city, so they sat with me, and then my mom came in, and, she's with me, and it took, I went in on May 10th, and I think the next day is when I actually, the labor started from all the, because they kept trying to put all the, I don't know the names of all the medicines, but, that to induce me. And finally, the labor came on. So I didn't have any, all those, I didn't do a cesarean or anything because I was just about entering my third trimester. So my son was still very small, and I was talking back and forth because I had just hired a doula. I was talking back and forth with my doula to see what I needed to do. She said, she was just talking me through everything. So it was just, it just felt very lonely. They try to move you from room to room to make sure that you're not next to someone who's giving birth to a live baby.
Oh, wow.
So they try to be cognizant of that, which is, appreciative at the hospital. The nurses were very nice. You can tell that they were, very, I guess, well trained on, going through this and making sure that you're as comfortable as possible. But you're in the labor and delivery ward, so, all you hear are people giving birth at all hours of the night, and you're trying to tune it out, and you're just trying to process everything. Mm-hmm. So it's it's definitely, definitely something to go through, especially with your first, your first child. Your first memory is that of giving birth, to stillborn baby. But he was a handsome baby. He was a healthy baby, and I thank God for being able to carry him. I read something where it says, I carried my baby his entire life or her entire life. And that's basically what happened.
Wow. So once you had him, you were able to hold him and take pictures with him and just spend some time with him for a bit before you had to give him back to the hospital or to the nurses.
Yeah, they had him to where we could hold him, and my husband cut the cord, and my mom was there, and they had professional picture, I guess a professional photographer that was that took pictures, of babies. So they had pictures for us, and so they were very accommodating, in that sense. It was just a rough time, even with me being pregnant with a fibroid. It was some delivery complications because the fibroid was so large that it was blocking my son from being born, So it was kind of a struggle. It took longer than it should have, so it was just, a harrowing experience,
Wow. So after you had him, were you able to go back and actually get the fibroid removed, or did it shrink back down?
Yes. I was told, they say that, after pregnancy, your fibroids will sometimes shrink down, or they usually shrink. But mine did not. And like I said, I was 34, I believe, when I was pregnant. So I knew that, time is so to speak, of the essence. And I've never been one of those people who were like, had my clock was ticking or anything. But, with everything that happened, I tried things like the castor oil packs to kind of shrink it a little bit, and the scans did show that it did start to degenerate a little bit. But because it was so large, it probably would take quite some time to completely shrink, and it wasn't making any noticeable progress. So I did have it taken out by one of the top doctors out here who performs the laparoscopic myomectomy, which is basically, are you familiar with that, where you don't have to do a complete, cesarean type of incision, but it's like 4 little incisions, and they go through with their little doctor tools and kind of cut it up and get it all taken out and tested and everything. So I went that route so that I would have hopefully minimum scarring.
Right.
So that was, I did get it removed.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. I finished Fire and Fury, and I would love to know your thoughts on it if you've listened to it. If not, you can get you a free audiobook and free 30-day trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Erica. My February selection for Audible is going to be our February book club selection, which is The Power of a Praying Wife by Stormy O'Martin. So if you're interested in getting that book or joining the Sisters in Loss book club, go to www.sistersinloss.com. And once again, to get your free audiobook and 30-day free trial, visit audibletrial.com/Erica. Once again, that's audibletrial.com/ERICA. Let's go back to just how this loss impacted you and your faith in God. Tell us about that.
Well, it definitely strengthened my faith in knowing that God is in control. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we make our own, decisions about what's going to happen, that in the end it's not up to us. I'm a planner, like, to the T.
Right,
My friends know if they come and visit me, we have an itinerary set. I have it hour by hour. We're going X, Y, Z at this time. But after, people say you live in like this new normal.
Right.
You look at things different. You look at life differently.
Right.
And now I live more moment by moment, knowing that nothing is promised to us. And little things don't bother me anymore, I guess, in life. Because I know that, it doesn't matter if, somebody open a door for me or say thank you or, just little petty things that might have rubbed me the wrong way in the past. It doesn't matter. They're bigger fish to fry. God is bigger than little things, and also that little things do matter. Like every breath you take, try not to take things for granted. Because like I said, we all know, I know you're a Christian. I know you know that God is always in control. And so just knowing that and being able to relinquish the control, being a control freak that I am, is a hard thing to give up.
I know it is.
But just being,
It is. I mean, I think that's the hardest thing, and I think that's one of my lessons I learned too. Is that like you said, God is ultimately in control. No matter how much we try to plan and say what we're gonna do, He ultimately gets the final say. I mean,
right. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest lesson. Just the daily peace of not having to hold the reins on my life.
Yeah.
Knowing that I don't have to take on that responsibility, that I just do my part and just know that God, God is going to see me through every time.
Amen. So that's a good transition to talk about your book, Journey to Peace, 31 Devotionals through the Grief of Miscarriage, Stillbirth, or other pregnancy loss. And you describe peace as pray and trust, act, change, and encourage. So let's talk about the inspiration for writing this devotional and, who is this devotional for and what can they get from it?
Yes. This devotional came shortly after my loss experience, because I had taken off from work, I guess on maternity leave, so to speak. But just, I guess, a grief. I just needed a moment. I just couldn't face the world.
How long were you able to take off?
Well, I actually took off for one of the positives of living in California is they have a they're very good with their maternity leave. Mm-hmm. So you get, I believe it's, you can get like up to 12 weeks maternity leave. So out of that, I took a month. Let me see, May, June, July. I took a month or two off, but then I decided not to go back to work to change my careers.
Oh, okay.
I was working. I took that opportunity. So I said, you know what? At this point, I thought I would have been doing something completely different with my life. But I finished up because I was taking classes at school, and I finished up. I took the time to just finish school out, do some internships, and that's how I transitioned to be to going into fashion design.
Oh, wow!
That's one of my passions. Yeah. So it was like I've gained a lot. I've lost. You think about all the things that you've lost. And I try not to stay in the pity party, but I've gained a lot. I'm able to transition because I wouldn't have been able to do that with with the demands of motherhood, I guess, so to speak. But I was able to transition to a new career that's more fulfilling for me, more creative for me. So yeah, that was something that I was able to do. I quit my job, I guess, essentially. And thankfully, I have a very supportive husband. So we were able to make that transition, fairly easily. And
so during that transition period, you wrote this book.
Yes, this is when I wrote this book. I've always been a writer, or like to write, or love to write. But I was just, because I had taken off of work, and I was at home. You're at home, you're in your thoughts, you're trying not to, you have, once you experience loss, you have the mix of what the postpartum depression. You have this you just have so many different emotions going on. You're dealing with the grief and depression possibly, or at least, deep sadness. And we went to counseling, which I know a lot of Blacks don't like to do, but I do recommend counseling, a therapy session with professionals, or even just your preacher, someone, who can listen. But yes, this is when I wrote the book, and it actually just kind of came to me. I think one of the scriptures that kind of weighed on me was about, joy coming in the morning. And I kept asking God, when is this joy going to come? Because I wake up every morning and this joy is not here, And I just really needed peace. I needed peace about the situation. I didn't want to wake up every day and cry all day and cry all night, cry myself to sleep. I didn't want to live life like that. So through my tears came this book. And it was just kind of like me going through the Bible and searching for answers, searching for God in this situation. Because you can feel so lonely, and you can feel like, well, not you, but me, I felt like I was almost like abandoned, like, okay, God, I thought we had this thing going on, we had this pregnancy and everything, like, why would you even allow me to go through this and take it away, You had so many questions, you have so many questions, I had so many questions, the why me questions, of course, which I believe are really common. So this is my way, I guess, of talking through it with God, trying to figure out, you may not necessarily get the quote-unquote why, but just reading through God's promises. Because, to go through, like I know you know about the testimonies, you got to have a test. Like everybody has been through something, And this is one of my somethings, one of your somethings, So just kind of changing my vantage point on it. And the devotions just go through and just taking my anxieties and my fears to God, just trying to figure out how to handle and release my emotions, and just transforming my mindset, to to being grateful and still being faithful, because God is faithful to us, and just still increasing my faith.
Right.
And I didn't hear our voice a lot, like I said, I did look for a lot of resources, and I didn't see a lot of us represented. Even though we were high on the, the statistics always tell us that we're at a higher risk for all these things that happen in pregnancy loss. And yet our voices aren't being heard, and I just wanted us to be represented.
Awesome.
In some way, some fashion.
In some fashion, yes. And I completely agree that Black women are, twice as likely to experience a stillbirth or miscarriage than our white counterparts. And, I mentioned to you before we started the podcast that when I was researching, Black authors who wrote books on miscarriage and infant loss and stillbirth, there aren't many books that are out there. So, as a therapist or a counselor, they always point us to other white people's books when, as a Black therapist or Black counselor, I want you to give me a story of someone I can relate to, someone who had fibroids or preeclampsia or endometriosis, all of these things that Black women are going through, that does affect them getting pregnant and keeping a pregnancy. I want to see those stories. Where are those stories being told? So when I saw, when I found your book, I was like, oh, I have to get her on the podcast, because we aren't represented. Like you said, we need to have our voice out there in this form as well as in print form. So this is what my February and Black History Month is all about, is just making sure that we display those Black authors, and you are definitely one of them that I wanted to talk to you about your devotional. So you all, I'm going to make sure I link her book in the show notes so that you can go out and get her 31-day devotional, Journey to Peace. And then you also have a journal to go along with this, right?
Yes, I have a journal that follows along the book, and because I think writing is a great therapy, it's a great healing tool. It's a way to get your emotions out. So definitely check both out.
So what are some other resources that are out there for other lost moms?
Yes. One that I recently came across was therapyforblackgirls.com.
Oh, yes. Sure. I love her podcast. Have you listened to it?
Yes. Well, I actually literally just found out about this website today.
Nice.
On Instagram.
Oh, man.
So
yes,
when I came across it, I said, I have to mention it.
Oh, yeah. I hope to get Dr. Jo Harden Bradford on the podcast one day to share her story and just to talk to us about just her what she has going on. But, yeah, she's Therapy for Black Girls is a podcast that's out there. Dr. Bradford, I think she's located in Atlanta, Georgia, and she has also a list of therapist directories in her show, and most of them are women of color or Black women. So I love her podcast, and I love that what she's doing to bring light to therapy in the Black community. So that's an awesome resource.
Yes, that's one of the top ones. I saw it today. It was by the grace of God. I was like, I have to mention that.
Yeah.
But also support groups. I went to a support group, and I think it did help me a lot. The MISS Foundation, MISS Foundation.
Okay.
.org. So that helped me out a lot. And then also the Star Legacy Foundation.org. They're both helpful. So definitely check those resources out.
Yeah, and I'll make sure I list Therapy for Black Girls, the MISS Foundation, and the Star Legacy Foundation in the show notes for you all who are interested in going to those websites. What encouraging words can you leave with the women who are listening, those who are in the position where, they may have a issue with, like we talked about, endometriosis or fibroids or, just any other women's health issue, and they're looking to try again and, try again to get pregnant?
Yeah. I think one of my favorite scriptures is Romans 8:28. It reads, and we know that all things work. And we know that all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. And I think that's definitely something to keep in mind, because you love God, plus anything that you're going through, your loss, your trauma, your pain, your grief, your hopelessness, your emptiness. Know that those things aren't necessarily good in itself, but God will ensure that they all work together for good, because you are called according to His purpose. So definitely just look to God's word, look to Him to heal you, to help you, to heal your hurts, to turn your love to love, your loss to love, your pain to peace, and your fear to faith. Definitely.
Amen. Amen. So where can we find you on social and your website?
My website, actually, you can probably find all my social handles on yourpeacejourney.com. I'm still trying to get into social media. So definitely check out the website, yourpeacejourney.com, where I'll be updating more frequently now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Keanna, for being on the podcast and sharing your story, as well as your book, your Journey to Peace, 31 devotionals for miscarriage, stillbirth, and other pregnancy loss.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Erica M. McAfee podcast. I pray that this episode was inspirational and a blessing to you. For show notes of today's episode, visit ericamcafee.com/podcast episodes. We now have a Facebook group. Please join the Sisters in Loss community on Facebook by going to ericamcafee.com/community to join in the discussion. This community is for you, the listeners of the Erica and McAfee podcast, and it's for us to dive deeper in discussion of the episodes. We're going to chat with some of the episode guests and discuss questions around grief, loss, marriage, faith, and love. If this group is for you, please visit ericamcafee.com/community to join. I am also launching my Trying Again Grief Coaching Service. This is for those who are trying to conceive after a loss and are looking for that emotional and spiritual support going through that journey. I have 3 open slots available for coaching. So if this is of interest to you, please visit ericamcafee.com/coaching and sign up for a discovery call with me. I look forward to helping you all through your grief journey and your pregnancy after loss journey. Please do not forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Erica M. McAfee podcast, especially if you're listening in iTunes. Keep the faith, and I will talk to you next Wednesday.